Alessandro, welcome.
Hey there. Thanks for having me.
Hey,
Absolutely. It's a pleasure.
yeah, sure.
Yeah, I remember talking with you on our space that we had a few weeks ago.
That's
It
right.
was a big, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm glad to be here on a podcast. We've kind of evolved from an audio only format into a video, and I hope this one will be even better.
Nice.
So
Well, I hope you'll accept me sipping some espresso while we get started.
I, we don't mind that at all. I got my cup here too.
cheers. Yeah, but I've got to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got a pretty big one. To be fair, I need a lot of energy for this one. It's going to be pretty hectic, I think, with our
Do you have
questions
a
we have.
coffee machine at home, Alessandro? Are you making like it
I have
yourself?
I have an incredible espresso machine at home. I saved up many years of tax returns and I sprung for a good one, and it's brought me a lot of joy. Highly recommend that investment.
Yeah,
This isn't
talk about
investment advice, though. This isn't investment advice.
yeah,
Okay.
totally good investment advice here. One that's only suitable. Right. Yeah, we're glad to have you here. Max is here with us, founder, and I'm gonna be your host, kind of like moderator type thing. Yeah, so I'm the head of communications, content manager type guy. I'm just doing media and some marketing stuff, and so yeah, we're gonna get into it. Just wanted to get to know your path with Stellar, how long you've been there, what did you do before, and what are you aiming for now?
In the scheme of things, for such kind of rich technology, I'm very new. So I joined Stellar Development Foundation 3 months ago ish as product manager of our privacy tooling. And as any folks who have gotten into this stuff know, it's a deep rabbit hole. There's a lot of really awesome tech happening, but it's supported by some very complicated math and a lot of assumptions that some of which are accurate, some are not. So doing my best to get up to speed, but learning a lot and very, very excited about what we're capable of doing now in the space that was not possible before.
That's really nice. I mean, yeah, talk about getting somewhere fresh. Only 3 months. How's it been for you so far? Do you like what you do, and um, how do you, adapt to something so grand in the grand scheme of things?
I love what I do. I've been in crypto since my friend introduced it to me in the context of Occupy.
Mm.
That was very early on, and I made it my research topic when I was working at a think tank. And so I was talking to corporations, nonprofits, governments about how blockchain would change the world. And at that time, it wasn't just about the tokens. Like even as far back as 2015-ish, when Vitalik was introducing the idea of Ethereum and people were using colored coins and all this stuff, like the concept of privacy came up often. And at that time, it was seen as revolutionary to have pseudonymity, but that it hits a wall, and especially I think on the individual level, people have had different approaches for managing privacy, but when enterprises get involved, the bar gets raised even higher. And even back then, the companies I was talking to wanted to get involved, but the idea of transitioning their business processes over to blockchain-based systems wasn't attractive, not only because of the complexity, but also again because of the privacy. It's just a completely different ball game when everything they do is publicly visible and auditable. And financial systems today don't assume that. They assume that everything should be private by default, and in fact, legally required to be so. So I've watched that transition happen, and even very early on, we were hearing proposals from sorry, a little rambly, but the what was it? Department of Defense or someone put out an RFP for fully homomorphic encryption as a way to do mass surveillance without having direct access to people's records and stuff, which is oh man, it's ugly. But it's interesting, even as early as I think that was maybe 2018 or something like that. People were thinking about these advanced privacy technologies and what they would enable us to do, and how we might strike some sort of balance between being able to maintain privacy while also ensuring compliance and sorting out bad actors where they need to be. So I'm excited that I started my career looking into that stuff in abstract, and I'm finally actually in the trenches with people who are building it for real. And we're actually now at the point where people are finally starting to do stuff with it.
Yeah, I think it's been long overdue, especially what you mentioned. I never heard about the Department of Defense, coming up with that.
I gotta dig that one up. I'm talking about it a lot more. Plus, we were talking about like ZK identity and like attestations for claims. I did a proposal to NIST for Medicare re-enrollment on an ongoing basis without having to like share your actual medical details using proofs, and like that was way back. So
yeah,
I talked about it as a building block, but I didn't actually know the math in there. And finally, folks like Max are helping me get up to speed.
I've heard of some like defense-related use cases when like Department of Defense wants to give money to some people like in Afghanistan, in Syria. They do not necessarily want like other people to know about like how much was sent, like and so on. So basically, they need privacy. So blockchain is a very convenient way to do that for these types of countries. But you really need some form of privacy.
I can't confirm nor deny that I've heard that before. But yeah, I mean, the funny thing is, like, I think you guys, this is probably a common theme when you're talking to people, but like privacy, people start with the idea of like, oh, well, what are you trying to hide? Or like, what are you a bad actor? Like they start with the assumption that you're a bad actor, but governments.
I'm thinking of it right now.
Yeah, governments require privacy. Agents operating in foreign lands require privacy. Everyday people assume and demand privacy. Like it's a fundamental right, and we should start with the assumption that people are good actors while also building in the ability to identify when people are abusing that system,
Yeah.
But I'm curious, what do you think, what is special about privacy that is decentralized? Because I think today there are two camps when it comes to especially institutional type of privacy. So think of like Canton Network. This is more like Web 2 style privacy when you're just running something in a closed server and like, yeah, so you have some interoperability, but this is very limited. This is like basically running your own system in your data center. And the other approach is like what you are trying to do in Stellar, and some other obvious ecosystems are also trying to approach this. So I'm curious, like, how do you look at this thing? Like, what are the pros and cons?
Well, I mean, I think they're both important approaches. I think one of them is maybe more comfortable because we've had a relationship with institutions that we hope have our best interest, and we trust them. And in many cases, like in operating in the US where I am, we do have an assumption that many of our institutions are going to protect us. And in most cases, for a lot of stuff, that is the case. Like you trust that your bank is going to keep your funds roughly secure. You hope that, if a credit card processor says that they're encrypting everything, that they actually are. And, that like your records are going to be maintained to the best of the ability. And we hope that if they're negligent in that role as like a caretaker of our data, that there will be punishment. Obviously, lots of global events over the course of the last few decades have proven otherwise in some very important ways. But like, there's still this idea of trust. But I think for Stellar, whose mission is to increase global financial access, there are a lot of markets where people don't have those institutions. They don't have an institution that they can necessarily trust to always keep their information private. So I think the model of ensuring that the data never touches anything public is a comfortable one, because that's what we've had to date, is like, trusting intermediaries. But when you talk about ultimately like more fluid interactions that happen across parties that mutually distrust each other, but want to be able to transact anyway, you can't just play like a favorites game of grouping among known people. Like you want the assurance that there's a baseline assumption of privacy, and then you set the ground rules there, and folks can interact safely on top of that. So I think for our role of expanding global access, you have to start with the assumption that everything is going to be private and respect those rules. And then it gives you more flexibility to like do composability on top of that, and like, integrate more stuff. And I think it's also just like, we can do better. Like, hoping that an institution will keep these things private is nice, and maybe that'll work out. But like, I would rather have some cryptographic assurances, and I would rather the code be open source so that many people can audit that. I think we can do better, So I think both valid approaches, and you'll probably see some mixes of the two, of like data custody sort of layers and stuff like that. But I want to see on-chain privacy that's configurable, that's opt-in, that is capable of hiding things, of making things private on the main chain, but giving people the option to permission that if needed.
Yeah,
That actually makes a lot of sense, Alessandro.
I also think I can add a little bit. I also think it's important that like these public chains, permissionless public chains, just attracted a lot of users and a lot of capital. And so if you are an institution and you want to launch some product, so why would you launch your RWA on some basically like closed chain where you will be the only distribution channel? So I think the beautiful part here is you can tap into the existing liquidity and existing user base. Yeah, sorry for interrupting.
No, I think that's totally accurate, and I think that's what people. I think there are boxes that have to be checked in order for a system to be safe enough to use. And I think folks looked at Stellar. They looked at the fact that since 2014 we've been thinking about the required things to ensure that institutions are doing their job and remaining as compliant as possible, while also benefiting from that open network that we all know is helpful for distribution, for finding new markets, for lowering the barrier to entry to financial access. And so like things like the Stellar's built-in freeze and clawback functions from the Stellar asset contract, like, those primitives were in place. And I think folks are now realizing that they can take advantage of those and finally saying, okay, actually, maybe we do have everything we need here to feel comfortable putting this asset on chain and allowing people to use it in new ways that we might not have expected, but we at least know that we have some control here.
Mm-hmm. I was actually going to ask you, the first question was going to be about when you talk to institutions and builders about privacy or public networks, what are the problems they're actually trying to solve first? And you managed to naturally answer that question before we even got to asking it. So, and yeah, we touched on the topic of what institutions do when we were talking about privacy, and privacy here can mean many different things depending on the use case.
Sorry to interrupt you. I was just going to say I can dive a little bit in there. So to date, blockchains have been assumed to be public, pseudonymous, but I think people just accepted that those were the constraints. But now folks have started to ask okay, now I know that privacy is possible on chain. Give me privacy. And that's where our discussions have to start, with our implementers and with SDF as a guiding force there. Folks are still figuring out what this means, what these capabilities allow them to do and what it could mean for things that they could safely do now that they couldn't before. I think that the request we often hear most is, I just want to keep the balances and transaction amounts private.
Pretty much your typical crypto guy.
Yeah, we're okay with having an address that maybe people are able to associate with our institution, or maybe that's even desirable. Maybe they loved the fact that folks could see that they're transacting and with whom they're transacting on chain. But what they didn't want is for someone to be able to see how big of a loan they're getting, or they didn't want people to be able to see the amount of a grant payment that's going to a project at a particular time. Or they didn't.
Then you'll have people crawling to that project and thinking, "Oh, where's the money?"
Yeah. You know that they're doing good work. That there's a relationship with the grant funder, but so I think knocking out that pillar was a big step for people being able to do things. Or even you think about bank settlement. It's not a surprise that banks settle with each other, but you really don't want to know the exact amount necessarily publicly, or peer-to-peer trades of large amounts of money. It's okay that folks, anyway, there's a lot of cases there. And for our work on confidential tokens that we're seeing an implementer like Open Zeppelin do, that's sufficient. But as I've started to talk to more enterprises, they're saying, yeah, that's the biggest piece, but also very importantly, the counterparties being known is still a vulnerability, either for attacks on that person, or scrutiny in an unsafe way of that particular address being involved in something, especially for Stellar, who does a lot of humanitarian work. We're often supporting implementers who are helping make payments. People make payments to vulnerable populations in jurisdictions where where it's a danger. Or not jurisdictions, but like places where it's a danger for folks to be known to be receiving medical help or whatever. So that counterparty privacy piece is what privacy pools like Arcane help us protect. On chain is like being able to allow people to interact safely in a way that's as compliance ready as possible, but while also maintaining that counterparty privacy so that folks stay safe or institutions stay safe. Like it may be even leaking too much information that someone's getting a loan at a particular time, like a known person is getting a loan at a time. That could indicate, oh, wow, this person's about to make a huge business move. And we now know that, so I think it's worth going that extra step to the counterparty privacy piece.
Yeah, and I think it became extremely relevant today when AI agents and like AI basically got so good at analyzing data. So it's really kind of I'm not aware if this service is public, but I would expect like the more and more resources are allocated towards analysis of on-chain activity that is public, that like it will be possible to figure out who you are. And recently the guy was de-anonymized, who just posted in Twitter so they say, hey, I used EtherFi credit card that is an on-chain, has an on-chain balance. Like, hey, I purchased this thing. So people figured out, okay, what's the price of this thing?
Yeah.
So when it happens, okay, let's find this wallet. And like, okay, how was it topped up? And like, and so on. And you can like get the whole picture, like, oh, this person has this amount of money. And I think the more crypto is integrated into day-to-day economy, and we see that debit cards, whatever cards, crypto cards are getting more and more popular like every day. I think this will become more and more relevant. So I really think that, it's one of the...
Well, I think for that reason, I don't know about you guys, like I hate having to scrutinize all of my daily actions considering the like data trails I leave for everything, That's an unreasonable ask of the public to be smart, to do all of that research, the technical research of every action that they've taken. So it's incumbent on us as innovators in this space to set the ground rules for participation and set it as a default. It's like things should be private by default. And then from there, people should be given the agency to selectively disclose at their will as appropriate where needed to the people who deserve or can safely handle that information, right? It should, like, blockchain transactions, we at Stellar, we care about these solutions being opt-in because we think that there are a lot of valuable situations where you just want public payments, you want things to be synonymous, whatever, instead of fully confidential or private. But people should always have the option to start with an assumption that they're going to be protected and then be able to move from there.
They usually do, especially when you go to a bank, put your money in there or get a loan. You automatically go to the end of that user terms and agreement, which is like probably 70 pages or something long. And there's quite a lot of things there that can pick at your address, pick at your email, pick at your purchase history, and of course do like a full-on research on you. But it's funny to make that comparison. I mean, not funny to make that comparison, but it's like fun to make that comparison because it just shows you how far we've gone here in our little circle of builders and blockchains. But that being said, going back to what I was saying about institutions and what they mean by privacy, as I said, it can mean many different things depending on a use case. Talking about banks, they may care about customer data, or a fintech company may care about transaction flows. Maybe there's like an asset issuer that considers everything in compliance access, and many businesses can do whatever they want. And when institutions ask for that privacy, what are they usually like asking to protect? Is it like the amounts, counterparties, customer data, maybe everything all together? Could you expand more on that?
Yeah, I think I shared a little bit, like the transaction amount and balance are the most important, and then it's counterparties. And then from there, there's a lot of extra space. It's like, are we actually sufficiently protecting the network calls that come from these addresses? Like, do we need to introduce a relayer so that the fact that they're interacting with the smart contract at all is made less obvious, are like, and then it's also like, you want to make sure that you're still doing the checks that are necessary for enterprises who have a higher regulation bar to be able to do business. So those are things like KYC. Okay, if you're doing a private payment, but in order to do that, you now first need to apply to do KYC, and that has like an on-chain trace. Like, obviously, then that diminishes to some extent the effect of doing the private payment. So thinking as early as, okay, what's the relationship between a person who wants to make a payment and the party that's helping to, or the party or the code that's helping to facilitate that? How can we do identity checks, or where there is a proof that a person can provide on chain without having to reveal any information publicly or create any like static identifiable information on there? Like, already there's kind of a relationship between people that's off chain, but there's just so many processes that can happen with zero knowledge identity, or just network layers, safety, that like the space is going to evolve to manage more and more of those gaps, but still maintain the assurances that we need in order to let financial institutions, for example, do the things that they need to do to stay safe and to remain compliant in their own jurisdiction.
Do you think now privacy is truly the main blocker for institutions to have more use cases on chain? Let's forget for a minute that we are building in a privacy space and we are like biased, but yeah, do you think it's truly, or is it like something else? You obviously spend a lot of time talking to them.
Well, I'm not the biz dev guy, so I used to be, but I'm the person they go to when privacy is a blocker. And I will say, for a lot of large deals, it is. Or which is to say, we're capable of doing so much, like, with what blockchains already provide. Like, clearly, I think Stellar, fact check me on this, I think we just passed 3 billion in real world assets on chain. So it's like clearly not a blocker for things. I mean, like, we're shooting up. We're seeing a lot of influx as people realize that they can, as I said, remain compliant in the ways that they need to, while still offering this expanded access and doing things that are really awesome, like reducing the barrier entry to getting access to money market funds and stuff like that, like where people can own like a smaller share of those without like a small minimum, or doing faster bank settlement from multiple days and down to just 1 or sub 1. So a lot of stuff is already possible, but what we're finding is that many institutions want to do things that involve private price data, or like private like, as I mentioned, like loans or something like that, where it's unacceptable. It just is. You cannot do it with the degree of safety that you need for that financial institution to do that without some layer of privacy. And those are the cases we're excited about, because like, I think folks are quickly realizing what they can already do, and we want to unblock all of it. We want to we don't want privacy to be a barrier for folks to get access, especially in places where they need it most, which is like, we all have, those of us who live in a good an area with greater institutional access have that luxury, but many people don't. And I think we feel a sense of urgency around fixing that, so that those people can safely interact and get the finance they need.
Yeah. Cool.
Oh, Triple might have frozen.
Oh, okay. I was
We need to claw him back.
Is my internet Turpal's? Okay, I hope we'll get Turpal Turpal back
from the void. Greetings.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that. I think that was me.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
you. It's
I hope you
it's
can hear
convenient
me.
when you have 3 people on the
Yeah.
call. You can
Yeah, all good. And I do unfortunately have to jump at the top of the space, but yeah, like awesome to chat with you
Yes.
so far. Any like last thoughts or questions?
Yeah. Okay. So we usually do like 40 minutes, but yeah,
I know.
we have to rush. Yeah, this time.
I'm actually here. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, sure. Now if
Okay, yeah. I thought I dropped out there for a second.
I think you did,
Both
yeah.
of you guys. All right. So, what I wanted to say was, yeah, you made a great point about privacy being something that you use for protection, when people would usually come to it and think, oh, privacy is because you want to hide something. No, I don't want to hide anything. I just want, a certain layer of protection to be applied to me for when I'm doing something, private, that should be private, especially, adding on your point on talking about loans. If I want to buy something that's really expensive, and it's been my lifelong dream, I want to buy a ring for my wife, for my girlfriend, to marry her, and I don't want my girlfriend, who's crypto savvy, to know that I bought something.
Or a medical procedure, like a sensitive medical procedure, anything like that, or a massive institutional loan to kickstart the next, giant $1 billion business,
Yeah, and Turpal, I'm not sure if you heard, like Alessandro will have to jump off really soon.
Yeah,
so we should probably try and ask. So like maybe in 3 to 5 years. What would make you say that Stellar won? That like you have won, and
when anybody in the world can participate in the global financial system while being protected and still maintaining compliance in their jurisdiction and the folks that are helping them, like, I think then we will have won. Like, for us, it's less about what's flashy, what's cool, it's more about what's practically going to help people come along with us and actually like grow wealth and grow access and kind of unify the global economy and community, by giving people those tools that they otherwise wouldn't have. And I think privacy is a massive piece to play there. I think in order for enterprises to feel comfortable offering what they already have beyond their own borders, and still, protect people, I think that's like it's a prerequisite. So my goals are pretty modest, which is just like, let's keep going. Let's keep doing what Arcane does really well, which is, ensuring that people can set the compliance rules that they need, and make sure that deposits are in the clear, and that like basically that folks can transact with that surety that they're not revealing something that they don't want to, without having to think about it. And like, let's make that easy for people. Let's just do like, Venmo-ish stuff on the blockchain and be able to pay stuff, but maybe turn that default to not sharing my emojis and weird purchases with my friend group or anybody. I really don't want AI bots looking at and scrutinizing. So that's my dream.
Let's hope that Venmo is not then sold to go on a mission to become immortal.
Yeah, well, we have options now. We've built the alternative, so I don't care what they do. Like, we want everyone to have access.
All right. I think that was actually, I think this is now a good time to probably, set the final stage. I think we managed to discuss a lot of good things and, set the foundation for what privacy is, of course, on chain. And maybe we can probably discuss the rest of the questions that I had written down for our part 2, if you'd be willing to do that.
That sounds great. Thank you guys so much for the time. And I'm looking forward to the rest of the conversation.
Yeah,
absolutely. Thank you, Alessandro. We'll see you on the next one.
Cheers. Bye.